The stars were bleeding. That's how Admiral Vexor Cathor described it when another human colony's defense grid collapsed in a cascade of burning atmosphere and ruptured reactors. From the bridge of the Zorkai Dominion, he watched the flames smear across the night side of the planet, his reflection fractured in the obsidian viewport. Another victory. Another reminder that the Empire's reach was absolute. Admiral, ground resistance eliminated. Remaining human signatures are minimal. The ensign's voice carried the satisfaction of routine slaughter. Vexor leaned forward, mandibles tightening in faint irritation. Minimal? I want none. His tone was calm, almost polite, but every officer on the bridge froze. Moments later, a distant flash, then silence. The humans were gone, another mark erased. It should have felt triumphant. Instead, there was the whisper of something unfinished. Rumors followed these humans like shadows. Primitive bipeds scattered across lost colonies, clinging to myths of a homeworld they could no longer defend. Yet somehow they survived longer than logic allowed. Vexor had studied their transmissions, fragments of music, laughter, anger. The spectrum of defiance. He couldn't decide if it fascinated or annoyed him. Another nest destroyed, said Commander Trell, his second in command. That makes 22 in this sector. Their extinction is imminent. Extinction, Vexor murmured, tasting the word. Yes. So we believed about the Varnak. About the Theresi. And yet, he gestured at the burning world below. Here we are again, fighting creatures who should have bowed and vanished quietly. Trell's frill twitched, uncertain whether the remark was criticism or philosophy. They are weak, but stubborn. Stubbornness, Vexor replied, is a form of strength misapplied. Dangerous when cornered. The commander chuckled. You sound impressed, Admiral. Vexor allowed a thin smile. I admire gravity, too. It kills without emotion. A murmur rippled through the deck as new telemetry arrived. The human's final transmission had been decrypted, a single line, broadcast on every channel before their fall. You shouldn't have come. The officers laughed. Someone muttered, superstition. Another called it primate dramatics. But Vexor didn't laugh. He leaned back, eyelids narrowing. They said the same words of Vega 12, he said softly. And at Corinth Station before the explosion. Coincidence. He dismissed it aloud, though not convincingly even to himself. An officer broke the silence. Scouts have located the primary system, Admiral. Sol. Scans indicate minimal defense, outdated fusion weaponry, ancient satellites. A relic. The bridge brightened with confidence again. Vexor rose, his silhouette tall and serpentine beneath the command halo. Then let us erase their relic. Prepare the fleet. We strike their birthplace. We end this species where it began. Applause echoed, mechanical and hollow. Hours later, as the fleet assembled for warp, Vexor stood alone before the stellar chart. Earth glimmered at the center, an insignificant blue spark. Every strategic instinct told him this final assault would secure his legacy in the archives of the Empire. Yet a quiet unease persisted, an itch he could neither name nor silence. He summoned his science officer, a small, thoughtful being named Relha, known for her inconvenient curiosity. You've studied their records, Vexor said. Tell me, what makes these humans endure when logic says they should already be ash? Relha hesitated. They change, Admiral. Rapidly. Each loss makes them sharper. Their stories warn even their children not to forget pain. Stories, he scoffed. Myths to comfort dying tribes. Perhaps. Yet every extinct civilization we've uncovered leaves a similar caution, etched in ruins or satellites. Always the same sentiment, do not provoke the humans. The bridge lights flickered. Vexor's crest stiffened. Meaningless coincidence. Relha bowed her head. Of course, Admiral. When she was gone, Vexor replayed the human broadcasts from conquered worlds, voices speaking in languages already forgotten. Amid static and screams, one pattern repeated, laughter. Human laughter, recorded even as their cities burned. Why laugh at the end? The fleet tore through slip space toward Sol, 1,000 warships strong. The stars stretched and blurred. Vexor addressed his officers, his voice echoing through the command net. This war ends tonight. Humanity dies, and the Empire ascends unchallenged. The crew roared approval. Confidence filled the corridors. But outside the ship, the dark between stars whispered otherwise. Crossing Neptune's orbit, the first anomaly appeared, a derelict mining station, apparently abandoned. Sensors detected faint energy readings. A last refuge, someone said. Vexor ordered an immediate strike. Plasma lances incinerated the facility. For a moment, silence. Then the wreckage pulsed once, twice, and a faint signal burst outward like a heartbeat. A human voice, faint but clear, slipped through every communication band. You shouldn't have come here. The others didn't listen either. Jokes erupted again. They recycle threats now. Trell snorted. Pathetic. But Relha stared at the readings. Admiral, that station transmitted directly toward Sol, on a frequency identical to our encrypted command network. How? Vexor demanded. No known method, she said quietly. Unless they already understood our codes. He froze. That wasn't possible. Yet deep inside, something cold and ancient stirred, a recognition that arrogance always precedes ruin. Continue toward Earth, he ordered at last. If they have secrets, we'll tear them from the ground. As the fleet advanced, strange phenomena multiplied. Dormant satellites awakening to track them, asteroid fragments aligning like sentinels, faint EM pulses echoing the fleet's own drive signatures back at them, delayed by fractions of a second, as if mirrored by an invisible observer. Vexor stared into the void. They're watching us. Trell scoffed. Paranoia. Perhaps, the Admiral murmured. Or prophecy. Earth came into view, a sphere of clouds and oceans, ancient and quiet. No defense fleets, no transmissions, only silence. Too silent. Targeting systems online, said the weapons officer. Vexor studied the planet one last time. Beautiful, he thought reluctantly. A world that birthed predators clever enough to imagine gods. He gave the order. Begin the attack. The engines roared, the first strike lances lit the dark, and every ship trembled. Sensors flared white, then died. A pulse surged outward from Earth, invisible yet absolute. One by one, Zorkai systems collapsed. What happened? Trell shouted. Relha's voice trembled. Admiral, the signal wasn't defense. It was recognition. We've been scanned. Outside the viewport, something vast moved beneath the ocean clouds. Not a fleet, not a storm, something alive, ancient, and mechanical all at once. Vexor's breath stilled. The humans hadn't been hiding. They had been waiting. Pull back, he whispered. Now. No one moved. From a planet below, a single transmission rose through the static, calm and certain. This is Earth Defense Command. You are trespassing on a quarantined world. Leave orbit immediately. The bridge went silent. Vexor's pulse quickened. They still exist. Relha looked up from her console, eyes wide with something between awe and dread. Admiral, she said softly, the humans are awake. And for the first time in his long. The command deck of the Zorkai Dominion felt smaller than it ever had before. Silence clung to every surface like frost. Warning glyphs pulsed crimson across the view panes, translating to a single, universal truth. They were being watched. No one dared to speak until Vexor's voice, low and steady, broke through the tension. Status. Unclear, Admiral, Relha replied. Her hands moved over the control lattice with trembling precision. Every system that interfaces with our targeting array is responding to Ghost commands. They're rewriting our code faster than I can isolate the source. Rewriting. Trell scoffed, more to suppress his fear than to challenge. How could primitives? A sudden flash cut him off. The forward viewport dimmed automatically to protect their sight. Across the darkness of orbit, one of their destroyers folded in on itself, imploding without explosion, simply gone. They didn't fire, Relha whispered. No energy discharge detected. Vexor's spines bristled. Then what killed it? Before she could answer, a new transmission cut across all frequencies. The voice was calm, eerily composed. Zorkai Command, this is Terran Defense Network. You are trespassing on a quarantined world. Leave orbit immediately. Failure to comply will trigger permanent hostilities. The bridge froze. The words were delivered in perfect Zorkai dialect. No accent, no error. Trell burst into nervous laughter. Permanent hostilities? Against us. He turned to Vexor as though seeking reassurance. They bluff. Empty posturing from remnants. But Vexor didn't respond. The tone of that voice, it carried no desperation, no pride. It sounded like someone reciting a long-practiced routine. Record their transmission, he said finally. I want it analyzed for origin. Before anyone could obey, the deck lurched. Lights flickered. Every ship in the formation began to drift off course as navigation data scrambled. The fleet AI screamed with contradictory readings, gravitational vectors fluctuating, mass displacement impossible to calculate. Something's bending space around us, Relha gasped. Counter the distortion, Vexor commanded. I can't, she said. Admiral, they're mapping us through it. The realization hit like a blow. They weren't being attacked, they were being studied. Through the viewport, faint glimmers appeared in the upper atmosphere, like auroras stitched with intelligence. Thousands of objects, small, silver, alive with motion, rose from the oceans below. They moved in coordinated swarms, rearranging patterns faster than sensors could track. They're not weapons, Relha murmured. They're observers. Then why do I feel hunted? Vexor growled. He tried to fire again, commanding the fleet to unleash its arsenal, but the command hung frozen in his console. One by one, ship after ship reported the same malfunction. Every control interface went dark, replaced by a single human phrase on the holo displays. Cease hostilities. Final warning. Trell slammed a clawed fist against the console. They think they can dictate terms to the Empire? Destroy the planet. No, Vexor snapped, his tone sharp as a blade. We don't act blind. Not now. His voice steadied the bridge, but it couldn't steady his pulse. He could feel the eyes of his crew, watching, doubting, hoping their commander still knew what victory looked like. Then the wormholes collapsed. Every exit vector that had brought them here, every path back to Zorkai space, vanished like light behind a closing curtain. The NAV screens displayed only static. They were sealed in, trapped inside an invisible sphere of gravity and intent. They planned this, Relha whispered. Admiral, this system, this whole region, was designed as a lure. A lure. The word echoed through Vexor's mind, heavy with the weight of realization. The human colonies they had annihilated, the easy victories, the lack of resistance, none of it was incompetence. It was orchestration. The humans had led them here. He turned toward the viewport again, watching the pale blue planet float in the void. It looked serene, untouched. Beautiful, even. And now, infinitely dangerous. Admiral, Relha said softly, permission to broadcast surrender protocol. Every officer turned toward her in shock. Surrender. Trell spat. You disgrace your station. Enough, Vexor barked. The word cut through the air like an electric whip. He faced Relha. Why? Because they've already won, she said. They're not fighting us. They're dissecting us. Every command we issue, every defensive measure, they're cataloging. The more we struggle, the more they learn. I think, Admiral, I think this is the beginning of something far larger. Vexor's jaw tightened. Then we will not be their specimen. He ordered the fleet to retreat using manual propulsion, bypassing the wormholes. The ships began to accelerate outward, but the space ahead folded inward again, swallowing them in mirror distortions. The stars themselves seemed to multiply, reflecting their ships back like ghosts. The sensor officer whimpered, Admiral, the readings, they're everywhere. I can't tell what's real. A voice answered, not from the comms, but from within the ship's internal systems, calm and unhurried. That's because you're still inside our observation field. Please refrain from further resistance. This phase of engagement has concluded. The bridge dimmed. Every console flickered off except the captain's chair. Only Vexor's controls remained active. The human voice continued, directed solely at him now. You were warned. The others didn't listen either. He leaned forward slowly, claws gripping the armrests. What do you want from us? Silence. Then, softly, to be left alone. And the connection ended. The ship's systems rebooted as though nothing had happened. The fleet hung motionless in orbit, half of it crippled, the other half paralyzed by indecision. Outside, the ocean swarms descended again, sinking back into the waves as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. The planet was once more serene, inviting. Deceptive. Trell exhaled shakily. Admiral, what now? Vexor didn't answer immediately. He turned toward Relha, whose expression carried both awe and sorrow. She had been right about the trap, about the pattern, about everything. He finally spoke. Now we return to the council and tell them what we've seen. Trell barked a bitter laugh. They'll never believe it. No, Vexor admitted. They won't, but they'll send another fleet. They always do. He rose from his command chair, posture rigid. His voice dropped to a whisper, meant only for himself. And when they come, the humans will be waiting again. The engines ignited, reluctant and unstable. As the fleet began its slow retreat from Earth's gravity well, a final transmission reached them, this time faint, almost humanly amused. You're free to leave, Admiral. But remember this, there are no second warnings. The sound lingered in the air long after the message faded, like the echo of an ancient promise. Vexor stared at the stars ahead and felt, for the first time in his long and victorious career, that the Empire was no longer the hunter. He didn't look back at Earth. Some instincts were too old to ignore. The return to Zorkai space was not a victory flight, it was a retreat cloaked in silence. The fleet limped home through the void, broken, half-mad from what they had witnessed. Ships drifted in uneven formation, their hulls scarred not by weapons but by something far worse, exposure to an intelligence that had reached into their systems, touched their thoughts, and let them go only because it had chosen to. No one spoke of it aloud. Fear had become their common language. Admiral Vexor Kothor stood before the Imperial Council, the Grand Hall echoing with contempt. The chamber's silver walls pulsed with the heartbeat of the Empire itself, a living monument to dominance. Dozens of counselors, robed in the colors of conquest, stared down at him from their suspended thrones. Vexor's armor was still scorched from the battle that never truly was. "You fled," Counselor Vor hissed, his scaled tongue curling with disdain. "You left Sol unconquered. You abandoned the mission and half the fleet." Vexor's gaze did not waver. "We were not fighting a mission. We were fighting inevitability." "Philosophy," Vor spat. "You were fighting humans. Barely evolved primates. You lost because you feared them." "I didn't fear them," Vexor said, voice cold as the void. "I feared what they've become." A wave of laughter rippled through the council. One of the older members leaned forward. "You expect us to believe they possess technology superior to the Zorkai? They have been stagnant for millennia." Vexor stepped closer to the dais. "Stagnant is not the same as sleeping. They hid their strength beneath the illusion of decay. Every colony they let us destroy was bait. Every transmission we thought we intercepted was scripted. We never fought humanity, we followed its choreography." The laughter died. His words, simple and precise, struck the chamber like a blow. Counselor Vor sneered. "You suggest they wanted us to attack? That this was all some trap?" "Yes," Vexor answered, "and we walked into it proudly." A hush followed. Even the luminous walls seemed to dim. Relha stood beside him, summoned as witness. Her voice was softer but carried a quiet conviction. "They are not what our records describe. They have evolved into something else, something that studies aggression the way we study minerals. Every ship that fired upon them became a lesson." Vor turned on her. "And what did they learn, little scientist?" She met his gaze. "How to win without fighting." A low murmur passed through the hall. The counselors whispered among themselves, weighing ridicule against the chill creeping up their spines. The High Chancellor raised a claw for silence. His voice was measured, ceremonial. "Even if your account holds truth, Admiral, fear does not excuse failure. The Empire cannot afford hesitation. A second fleet is already in preparation. You will serve as tactical advisor and redeem your name in the fires of conquest." Vexor's composure cracked for the first time. "Do not send them," he said, low but urgent. "You will not return a fleet. You will return ghosts." The Chancellor's gaze hardened. "You forget your place." "I forget nothing," Vexor said. "But you forget history. Every empire we buried thought itself immortal. Do you know what the humans have that we do not? Memory. Pain. They pass it on as inheritance. Every scar, every defeat, every act of cruelty, they've recorded it in their blood." His words fell like iron. The chamber grew still. The Chancellor dismissed him with emotion, but there was uncertainty now, tiny fractures in their arrogance. Hours later, in the solitude of his quarters, Vexor stared at the holoscreens projecting human history. The archives had been restricted, but Relha had overridden the barriers. Images flickered across the room, trenches filled with fire and mud, mushroom clouds over deserts, machines tearing through skies of smoke. Centuries of violence compressed into moments. He watched humans fighting not aliens, but themselves. Cities turned to ash. Oceans poisoned. Yet always, somehow, survivors rebuilding from dust. Relha entered quietly, eyes reflecting the pale light of the screens. "Do you see it now?" she asked. Vexor nodded slowly. They mastered destruction long before they looked to the stars. Every empire before them fought for domination. Humans fight for something more primal. Survival. "No," he said. "Continuation. They don't want to rule. They want to end the fight itself, by any means necessary." Relha studied him for a moment. "You sound as though you admire them." "I understand them," Vexor replied, "and that terrifies me." A silence settled between them, filled only by the muted hum of the ship's core. Then the comms flared to life, Council Command broadcasting fleet mobilization orders. The second wave would depart within days. Thousands of ships, millions of soldiers. They're going to make the same mistake, Relha whispered. Vexor turned away from the screens. No, they're going to make it worse. He stared out at the stars, their cold light glittering like the eyes of predators. He imagined human eyes looking back, unblinking. Somewhere out there, beyond the void, Earth was waiting. Not hiding, not preparing, simply watching. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer, almost reverent. They're not a species, he said. They're a verdict. The next morning, Vexor made his decision. He ordered his personal ship into deep space beyond the authorized sectors, transmitting only a brief message to the Council. Do not engage them again. The war is already lost. They would call him traitor. They would call him coward. But he no longer cared. Somewhere, buried in the static of old human transmissions, he had heard laughter, cold, amused, patient. It hadn't been a threat. It had been recognition. As his ship accelerated into the dark, Relha joined him on the bridge. Where are we going? She asked. To warn the others, he said. Someone has to believe before it's too late. Stars stretched into white lines ahead of them. Behind them, the Empire stirred, proud and blind, assembling its armada for another glorious conquest. Vexor closed his eyes briefly, picturing that blue world again, the silent oceans concealing machines older than empires, the calm voice that had spoken as if reciting prophecy. Leave orbit immediately. They hadn't listened. Now, as his ship vanished into the endless dark, Vexor realized that the humans didn't need vengeance. They had patience, and patience was a weapon no empire could survive. He looked once more toward the direction of Earth, a faint glimmer among billions of stars. You warned us, he murmured. And now the galaxy will learn what that means. The engines flared, and the Zorkai Dominion disappeared into hyperspace, carrying with it the first whisper of fear that would soon sweep across the stars. The war began without an announcement. One moment, the Zorkai Empire ruled half the known galaxy. The next, its fleets began vanishing from the stars as if the universe itself were erasing them. Reports came in fragments, whispers of entire armadas collapsing into silence, of planets waking to find their orbital defenses turned against them, of unseen enemies that struck and disappeared before alarms could even sound. No one understood what was happening. No one except Vexor Cathor. He watched it unfold from exile, his ship adrift among dead systems. The transmissions were always the same, bursts of static, then fragments of terrified voices. They came through the gate. No warning, no heat signature, then nothing. Every report ended in the same void. Humanity was moving. They were not attacking planets, not conquering them, but dismantling everything that had once served the Zorkai machine of war. With mathematical precision, they removed the Empire's ability to wage violence. Relha stood beside Vexor as the latest transmission ended in silence. Her expression was a mix of dread and awe. They are not fighting for victory, she said quietly. They're cleansing the galaxy of the idea of war. Vexor's voice was low, almost reverent. They've learned that fear lasts longer than fire. They'll leave ruins as warnings, not trophies. He closed his eyes, remembering the human voice that had once spoken to him from the void. Calm, certain, final. He had thought it a threat. Now he knew it was a statement of truth. The Council, blind in its arrogance, had deployed the second wave weeks earlier. 5,000 ships, led by the Supreme Commander herself. Their mission, to reclaim Zorkai dominance. Their fate, silence. No distress calls. No wreckage. Just the echo of their disappearance. The humans had not only outmatched their technology, they had outthought it. Every path, every wormhole, every predictable decision had been accounted for. Vexor turned from the dead holoscreens and stared into the dark. They've become the architects of inevitability, he said. Every move we make, they've already calculated its failure. Relha's gaze softened. You warned them. You did what you could. Warnings mean nothing to those who believe themselves gods, he murmured. Now they'll learn what it feels like to pray. The ship's sensors flickered suddenly. A spatial distortion formed beyond the viewport, like light bending around invisible glass. Vexor's pulse quickened. It's them. For a moment, space itself seemed to breathe. Then it opened. Human ships emerged, not in the brutal formations of conquest, but in elegant, deliberate order. Their hulls were black, seamless, reflecting starlight like mirrors. They moved without heat signatures, without distortion trails. To the Zorkai eye, they appeared less like machines and more like shadows given intent. They found us, Relha whispered. Vexor stood tall, forcing his voice steady. They always would. A signal pierced the silence, one he recognized instantly. The same voice that had once warned him over Earth's orbit. Admiral Vexor Cathor, you left the battle before it began. That was wise. He exhaled slowly. You call this a battle? This is correction, the voice replied. War is over. You only have to choose which side of peace you wish to stand on. Vexor hesitated. And if we refuse? There was a pause, and then the voice answered with chilling honesty. Then you won't exist long enough to refuse again. The human fleet surrounded them silently, not firing, not threatening, simply there. Vexor had faced countless enemies in his life, but never one so completely calm. That calm was what terrified him most. He nodded once to Relha. Transmit surrender protocol. Relha's hand hovered over the console. Do you trust them? He met her eyes. I trust inevitability. As the signal was sent, the lead human vessel drew closer. Its hull shimmered, reshaping until a transmission field appeared between them. The human who materialized was not armored or weaponized, just a woman, ageless, her expression unreadable. Your empire is finished, she said. But you are not. Vexor bowed his head slightly. Then what am I? An observer, she said. You've seen what pride creates. Help us prevent it from being born again. He studied her, searching for deceit and finding none. You would have me serve you? No, she replied. We don't want servants. We want witnesses. Her image flickered, then faded, and the human fleet vanished as swiftly as it had arrived, leaving only silence and the faint hum of residual gravity. Relha exhaled shakily. They didn't destroy us. No, Vexor said, sinking slowly into his command chair. That would have been mercy. Over the following days, reports flooded the networks. Entire empires capitulated without resistance. Planets surrendered before human fleets even entered their orbit. The Zorkai capital fell not through bombardment, but through disconnection, their entire data infrastructure rewritten, their power grids dismantled, their weapons turned to scrap by invisible code. Humanity hadn't conquered through force, they had rewritten the rules of conflict itself. When the transmission ceased, the galaxy fell quiet for the first time in millennia. No one dared speak of rebellion. No one dared test the silence. Weeks later, Vexor stood upon the observation deck of the rebuilt Zorkai command station, no longer an empire, merely one world among many. The stars glittered above like 1,000 eyes, unblinking, patient. Humanity's presence was invisible but undeniable. Their ships patrolled unseen, their algorithms governed the balance of peace. Relha approached, her voice subdued. They've offered you a position. Galactic liaison. A symbol of cooperation. Vexor gave a humorless smile. A keeper of peace for a civilization that no longer remembers how to fight. Fitting punishment. It's not punishment, she said. It's purpose. He turned toward the window, the faint reflection of his scarred face framed against the stars. Perhaps. Or perhaps it's a reminder that when predators forget their limits, someone must be there to remind them. Relha studied him quietly. Do you think they'll ever stop watching? No, Vexor said. And that's how it should be. The room fell silent. Outside, a distant shimmer rippled across the void, a human ship phasing briefly into visibility, then fading back into the dark. He watched it go, a strange peace settling over him. The fear had not vanished, it had simply evolved into understanding. Humanity hadn't destroyed the Zorkai to rule them, they had done it to ensure no one ever repeated their mistake. He recalled the ancient warning, spoken by conquered worlds and dismissed as superstition. Do not provoke the humans. Now he understood its meaning. Not a curse, but a truth earned through centuries of suffering. As the stars burned cold and silent around him, Vexor whispered the words to himself, not as fear, but as reverence. They told us once, he said softly, do not attack the humans, because they will hunt you forever. He turned away from the stars, the weight of history pressing down on him, yet for the first time, he felt something close to calm. The galaxy had been reshaped, not by conquest, but by consequence. And in that silence, humanity waited, watching, patient, eternal. The final signal came through the comms a moment later, transmitted across every known world in 1,000 languages.